In the grand tapestry of human history, there are threads that run in different directions. While most follow the established pattern, some individuals possess a rare and powerful ability. They see the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be. They are the dreamers, the architects of tomorrow, who look upon the complex machinery of our civilization and dare to ask, what if we rebuilt it entirely? These are the minds that don't just solve problems, they redefine them. They are often misunderstood, their ambitions dismissed as fantasy, their relentless drive seen as obsession. Yet, it is from their seemingly impossible dreams that the future is forged. They don't just push the boundaries, they operate as if boundaries do not exist. They look at the challenges that seem insurmountable to others, the tangled webs of energy consumption, the fragility of our planetary existence, the very limits of human biology, and they imagine elegant, audacious solutions. Elon Musk is a quintessential figure of this archetype. He is a man driven not by the pursuit of incremental improvements, but by a desire to rewrite the operating system of human civilization. His ambition isn't confined to a single industry or a single country. It is planetary, even interplanetary. He doesn't want to build a better car. He wants to fundamentally change how humanity uses energy. He doesn't want to build a faster plane. He wants to make humanity a multi-planetary species. This is not the thinking of a conventional businessman. This is the thinking of an engineer applying his logic to the biggest questions of our time. To understand this relentless drive, we must go back to its source. His story begins not in the gleaming tech hubs of Silicon Valley, but in Pretoria, South Africa, during the turbulent final years of apartheid. It was a society defined by rigid structures and deep-seated conflict, an environment that could stifle imagination. For a young Elon, childhood was far from idyllic. He was a quiet, introspective boy, often lost in his own thoughts, which made him a target. He endured severe bullying, an experience that was both physically and psychologically scarring. This profound sense of isolation, of being an outsider in his own world, didn't break him. Instead, it forged a fiercely independent character and pushed him inward, toward a universe he could control, the universe of knowledge. As a boy, he found his true escape, his real education, not in the classroom, but in the pages of books. He was a voracious reader, reportedly devouring the entire Encyclopedia Britannica and spending 10 hours a day lost in science fiction. In the grand sagas of authors like Isaac Asimov, he discovered a key idea that would become a cornerstone of his life's philosophy, that civilizations rise and fall, and that proactive steps must be taken to preserve knowledge and ensure the long-term survival of consciousness. While other kids were playing outside, Musk was contemplating the fall of galactic empires and the importance of safeguarding humanity's future. This was where the seeds of SpaceX and his grander ambitions were planted, in the fertile soil of science fiction. Alongside books, he discovered another portal to a different reality: the personal computer. He got his hands on a Commodore VIC-20 and a programming manual that was supposed to take 6 months to complete. He finished it in 3 days. He wasn't just playing games, he was deconstructing them, understanding their logic, and then building his own worlds, one line of code at a time. This intense focus culminated in a remarkable achievement. At just 12 years old, he designed, programmed, and sold the code for his first video game, a space shooter called Blaster, to a computer magazine for $500. It was a small sum, but its significance was immense. It was the first concrete proof that he could take an idea from his imagination, build it with the tools at his disposal, and create real-world value. This early entrepreneurial success was the first spark in a life that would be defined by a singular guiding principle: to identify and work on the most critical challenges facing humanity. As he grew older, his ambition outgrew South Africa. He was driven by a powerful desire to be at the epicenter of innovation, which in his mind was unequivocally the United States. To get there, he first moved to Canada, his mother's birth country, enrolling at Queen's University. He eventually secured a transfer to the University of Pennsylvania, where he pursued 2 distinct but complementary fields of study. He earned a degree in physics to understand the fundamental laws of the universe, his first principles approach in academic form. Simultaneously, he earned a degree from the Wharton School in Economics to understand the systems that governed money and business. This dual expertise would become his superpower, the ability to ground revolutionary scientific ideas in viable business models. Upon graduating, he moved west to California, enrolling in a PhD program in applied physics at Stanford University, with plans to research advanced energy storage technologies for electric vehicles. But this was 1995. The world was on the cusp of a revolution. The internet was exploding from a niche academic network into a global phenomenon. The air in Silicon Valley was electric with possibility. For Musk, this was a pivotal moment. He stood at a crossroads: continue down the prestigious, predictable path of academia, or seize the once-in-a-generation opportunity presented by the birth of the commercial internet. The choice was clear. The future wouldn't wait. He made a life-changing decision. After just 2 days, he dropped out of Stanford. He and his brother, Kimball, pooled their meager resources and launched their first company, Zip2. The idea was to create an online city guide for newspapers, essentially a digital version of the Yellow Pages, complete with maps. It was a brilliant concept, but the reality was a grueling, all-consuming struggle. They rented a tiny office in Palo Alto and, to save money, they lived there, sleeping on a futon and showering at the local YMCA. They had one computer. During the day, the website ran on it. At night, Elon coded on it. It was a relentless, caffeine-fueled existence, a trial by fire in the crucible of Silicon Valley. After 4 years of relentless effort and navigating the treacherous waters of venture capital and corporate partnerships, their persistence paid off. In 1999, at the height of the dot-com boom, computer manufacturer Compaq acquired Zip2 for over $300 million. Elon's share was $22 million. At just 28 years old, he was a multi-millionaire. For most people, this would have been the ultimate goal, a lifetime achievement. But for Musk, it was never about the money itself. The money was simply a tool, the fuel he needed for his real ambitions. The sale of Zip2 wasn't the end of the story, it was the end of the prologue. Now, with capital in hand, he could finally begin to tackle the grand challenges that had captivated his imagination since he was a boy reading science fiction in South Africa. For most 28-year-olds, selling a company for over $300 million would be the final chapter, the storybook ending. After the sale of Zip2, Musk's personal take was a staggering $22 million. The logical next step was retirement, a life of exotic cars, private islands, and leisurely pursuits. But Elon Musk was not wired for a life of leisure. The ink on the Compaq deal was barely dry, and his mind was already racing, consumed by a far larger, more intractable problem. He saw the sale not as a finish line, but as a funding round for his next, far more audacious venture. While the world was still grappling with the novelty of the internet, Musk was looking at one of society's oldest institutions, banking, and saw a dinosaur lumbering towards extinction. In the late 1990s, finance was a world of brick and mortar, of bankers' hours, endless paperwork, and frustrating delays. Moving money was a slow, cumbersome process, shackled by legacy systems built decades earlier. Musk envisioned a future where finance was instantaneous, digital, and accessible to everyone, everywhere, directly from a computer. He didn't just want to build a better bank. He wanted to dismantle the old system and rebuild it from first principles. He immediately invested $12 million of his own fortune into his next idea, X.com. It was a name that was bold, mysterious, and, in Musk's view, represented the future of finance. The vision was breathtakingly ambitious. X.com wasn't just an online bank. It was conceived as a complete financial services ecosystem. A one-stop shop where you could manage your checking and savings accounts, apply for loans, buy insurance, and trade stocks, all through a single unified platform. This was a radical concept in an era when the financial industry was deeply siloed and fiercely resistant to change. He assembled a team of bright engineers and financiers, driven by his relentless energy and conviction. But the challenges were immense. They faced deep-seated skepticism from regulators, who were wary of this new breed of internet company wanting to handle people's life savings. The technology itself had to be built from scratch, with security being the paramount concern. How do you convince millions of people to trust a website with their money? Musk's answer was to make it so seamless, so efficient, and so beneficial that they couldn't afford not to. But X.com wasn't the only startup with this idea. Just down the road in Palo Alto, another company, Confinity, founded by Max Levchin and Peter Thiel, was gaining traction. Their killer app was a simple payment service called PayPal. Initially designed for beaming money between Palm Pilots, it had brilliantly pivoted to email-based payments. This found a perfect product-market fit with the burgeoning world of online auctions, particularly on eBay, where sellers needed a simple way to accept payments from winning bidders. Soon, X.com and Confinity found themselves locked in a brutal, head-to-head battle for market supremacy. It was a classic dot-com-era war, fueled by venture capital and a winner-take-all mentality. Both companies began offering cash bonuses to attract new users, $10 to sign up for X.com, $10 to sign up for PayPal. This strategy ignited explosive user growth, but it came at a terrifying cost. They were burning through millions of dollars every month, hemorrhaging cash in a desperate race to become the dominant platform before the money ran out. The market wasn't big enough for both of them. One would have to die for the other to live. As the burn rate became unsustainable, both sides recognized the mutually assured destruction they were facing. They were so focused on killing each other that they were vulnerable to a larger, more established player entering the market and crushing them both. A merger was the only logical path forward. In March of 2000, after tense and fraught negotiations, the two rivals agreed to join forces. The deal was structured as a 50-50ths merger, creating a new entity that combined X.com's financial infrastructure with PayPal's viral growth engine. Musk became the chairman and largest shareholder of the new company. On the surface, it was a marriage of equals, a powerhouse poised to conquer the world of online payments. But beneath the surface, the union was a clash of cultures, technologies, and personalities. The merged company was a hotbed of conflict from day one. The most significant battle was over the brand. Musk, ever the visionary, was adamant about consolidating everything under the X.com name. He believed it was a stronger, more versatile brand for the financial empire he intended to build. However, the Confinity team, led by Thiel and Levchin, argued that the PayPal brand had enormous goodwill and recognition, especially among the critical eBay user base. Internal data was unequivocal. Users found PayPal friendly and trustworthy, while X.com sounded generic and, to some, even pornographic. But Musk was unyielding, viewing the resistance as a lack of vision. This was compounded by a major technical dispute. Musk wanted to migrate the company's entire back-end infrastructure from the stable, open-source Unix platform to Microsoft's Windows Server technology. The engineering team, fiercely loyal to Levchin, saw this as an act of insanity, a risky, expensive, and technically inferior move that would destabilize the entire system. The internal divisions deepened, creating two distinct tribes within the company: the X-Men, loyal to Musk, and the PayPal Mafia, who sided with Thiel and Levchin. The simmering tensions finally boiled over in September 2000. Exhausted from the merger and the constant infighting, Musk took a long overdue working vacation, flying to Australia to raise funds and celebrate his recent marriage. It was the opening his rivals had been waiting for. While Musk was in the air, 20,000 feet above the Pacific and completely unreachable, the board, led by Peter Thiel, staged a coup. They held an emergency meeting and voted to remove him as CEO, citing his divisive leadership and the controversial technology decisions. When Musk's plane finally landed in Sydney, he turned on his phone to discover he had been unceremoniously fired from the company he had built. He was replaced as CEO by Peter Thiel. It was a brutal, painful lesson in corporate politics and a profound personal betrayal. Despite the acrimonious ousting, Musk remained on the board and was still the largest shareholder, a testament to his foundational role. With the internal power struggles resolved, the company, now officially and permanently rebranded as PayPal, could finally focus all its energy on a single goal. Under Thiel's leadership, they abandoned the grand financial supermarket vision of X.com and doubled down on what worked, providing the simplest, most effective payment solution for eBay. This singular focus was transformative. PayPal became the lifeblood of the world's largest online marketplace, growing at an astonishing rate. It solved the fundamental problem of trust between strangers online, making e-commerce viable on a massive scale. The company went public in February 2002, one of the first dot-coms to do so after the bubble burst, a huge validation of its business model. The public offering was just the beginning. Just a few months later, in July 2002, eBay, realizing it was better to own the platform than to compete with it, acquired PayPal for a staggering $1.5 billion. As the largest individual shareholder with 11.7% of the company, Elon Musk's stake was worth over $180 million after taxes. It was a fortune that dwarfed his earlier payout from Zip2. But more than the money, the PayPal saga was a crucible. It taught him harsh but invaluable lessons about the importance of user focus, the dangers of hubris, and the brutal realities of corporate power. The pain of his ousting was real, but it ultimately liberated him. He now possessed what he called "fuck you money," a level of wealth that meant he would never again have to answer to a board of directors or compromise his vision. This time, he had the capital, the experience, and the hardened resolve to pursue his true dreams. Dreams that were not about websites or finance, but about the very future of humanity, space, and sustainable energy. The financial revolution was over. The revolutions that would define his legacy were just about to begin. With the $180 million he earned from the sale of PayPal, Elon Musk could have retired to a private island. Instead, he channeled his entire fortune, and his very being, into tackling two monumental challenges that had captivated his imagination since he was a boy reading science fiction novels: revolutionizing transportation on Earth, and opening a path for humanity to travel beyond it. These weren't just business ventures. To Musk, they were fundamental missions for the future of the human species. He saw a world dangerously dependent on fossil fuels and confined to a single vulnerable planet. He wasn't just aiming to build companies. He was aiming to change the trajectory of civilization itself. First, he turned his attention to the automotive industry. At the time, electric cars were a joke, slow, ugly, with pathetic range, and viewed as an environmentalist's fantasy. The recent controversial crushing of GM's EV1 SS had seemingly cemented the idea that electric vehicles had no future. Musk saw it differently. He believed the technology was viable, but the execution had been passionless. He invested heavily in a tiny Silicon Valley startup, Tesla Motors, founded by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. Their plan was audacious, to prove electric cars could be not just practical, but beautiful, fast, and deeply desirable. They wouldn't start with a sensible sedan. They would start with a high-performance sports car that would shatter every negative stereotype. Simultaneously, he pursued his ultimate passion: space. The aerospace industry was a closed club, a government-funded behemoth dominated by giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Costs were astronomical, innovation was stagnant, and access to space was reserved for nations, not people. Musk's initial plan was to buy refurbished Russian rockets to send a greenhouse to Mars, a project he called Mars Oasis. But he quickly discovered the rockets themselves were prohibitively expensive. In a moment of profound realization, he concluded that the only way to achieve his goal was to build the rockets himself. And so, he founded his own company, SpaceX, with the explicit goal of building reusable rockets from scratch, a feat the entire industry, with its decades of experience, called a physical and economic impossibility. The challenges were immense, and they arrived immediately. At Tesla, producing their first car, the Roadster, became an engineering and financial nightmare. The plan to use a chassis from the Lotus Elise was meant to simplify things, but integrating their revolutionary battery pack and electric motor proved fiendishly complex. A critical component, the transmission, became a source of endless torment. The initial design for a 2-speed gearbox, essential for achieving the target 0-60 time, repeatedly failed during testing, threatening the entire project. Millions of dollars and precious years were burned trying to fix it, before they were forced to abandon it for a simpler single-speed solution, compromising on the car's initial performance specs. Costs spiraled out of control. The car, initially priced under $90,000, was actually costing over $120,000 to produce. Tesla was hemorrhaging money with every vehicle it struggled to build. At SpaceX, the struggle was even more dramatic and public. The first 3 launches of their Falcon 1 rocket were heartbreaking, catastrophic failures. In March 2006, the first rocket ignited, lifted off the pad just a few feet, and then, due to a fuel line leak, fell back and exploded. A year later, the second rocket made it to space, a huge milestone, but a control issue sent the upper stage into an uncontrollable spin, and it failed to reach orbit. The third attempt, in August 2008, was the most painful of all. The first stage performed flawlessly, but a tiny, unforeseen error, a slight residual thrust after separation, caused the first stage to bump into the second, destroying the mission. Each failure was a multi-million-dollar bonfire, incinerating not just hardware, but also the company's credibility. The year 2008 became the crucible of his life. The parallel struggles of his 2 companies converged into a perfect storm of failure. Both Tesla and SpaceX were simultaneously running out of money. The development hell of the Roadster had drained Tesla's coffers, and the repeated launch explosions had left SpaceX on life support. Musk was facing an impossible choice: let one company die to save the other, or risk losing them both. He was burning through his PayPal fortune at an alarming rate, and the end of the line was fast approaching. As if the internal pressures weren't enough, the entire global economy imploded. The 2008 financial crisis hit, and the credit markets that might have offered a lifeline slammed shut. Venture capital vanished overnight. No one was willing to invest in a cash-burning electric car company or a rocket startup that had never reached orbit. The media, once intrigued, turned vicious. Critics and industry veterans openly mocked him, calling him a foolish dot-com billionaire squandering his fortune on impossible dreams. Failure didn't just seem possible, it seemed absolutely, unequivocally certain. Faced with total collapse, Musk made his final, desperate move. He gathered the last of his personal fortune, every dollar he had left in the world, and made the agonizing decision to split it between the 2 failing companies. It was a bet the farm moment, not just for the businesses, but for his own financial survival. He was now, as he would later say, all in. He moved his life into the factories, working over 100 hours a week, sleeping on couches, and personally intervening in every critical engineering and financial decision. He pushed his teams and himself to the absolute limit of human endurance, trying to stave off bankruptcy one day at a time. The moment of truth arrived in September 2008. After the third failure, the engineers at SpaceX had identified the fatal flaw and worked tirelessly to correct it. But there was no margin for error left. SpaceX had just enough money, just enough parts, for one last launch attempt. This was it. The 4th flight of the Falcon 1 was not just another mission, it was for everything. If it failed, SpaceX was over. The factory would be shuttered, the dream of reusable rockets would die, and a huge part of Musk's life's work would be reduced to a pile of expensive wreckage at the bottom of the Pacific. In September 2008, the entire future of SpaceX rested on its 4th flight. The rocket lifted off, the stages separated cleanly, and against all odds, it successfully reached orbit. SpaceX was the first private company in history to do so. They had survived. Just weeks later, Tesla secured a last-minute funding round, saving it from bankruptcy on Christmas Eve. With the company saved, Tesla launched the Model S, a car that won countless awards and redefined the automotive industry. Tesla's success forced every major automaker to pivot to electric, igniting a global revolution in clean transport. At SpaceX, the next challenge was even bigger: landing and reusing their rockets. After many explosive failures, in 2015, they achieved the impossible, changing the economics of space forever. Today, SpaceX dominates the launch industry and flies NASA astronauts, ending America's reliance on foreign rockets. Elon Musk's journey offers powerful lessons: to dream big, to break problems down to their basic truths, and to persevere in the face of failure. He has inspired a new generation of engineers, scientists, and entrepreneurs to tackle the world's hardest problems. His story is far from over. The focus now is on Starship, the vehicle he believes will finally take humanity to Mars. His work has transformed our world, accelerating a clean energy future and reigniting our ambition to explore the cosmos. His legacy is not just in the cars or rockets, but in the new sense of possibility he has given to the world, reminding us all to look to the stars and imagine what could be.